Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Mr. Harvey. Let's continue our lecture on Chapter 5. So today I'm going to be continuing to discuss about the English Civil War. If you remember, prior to this lecture, in the previous lecture, I discussed the Stuarts. I discussed some of the major causes and kind of some of the early points of conflict between Parliament and the monarch and some of the religious tensions that we had in England. Today I'm going to be discussing the English Civil War, the aftermath of the English Civil War, the Interregnum, the Restoration, and eventually the Glorious Revolution, the English Bill of Rights, and some of the other important happenings in England, and eventually the birth of the UK. So let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, now uh, the two groups that are going to be fighting in the English Civil War are going to be the Cavaliers and the Roundheads. Okay, the Cavaliers are going to be the supporters of the monarchy of the king. All right, and remember, this monarch that is really instigating this, that is really facilitate a lot of this tension between Parliament is Charles the First, one of the Stuarts. So the Cavaliers are going to be supporting Charles. All right, and they are made up of clergy, supporters of the Anglican Church, gentry, and especially Irish Catholics, and people who are very Catholic. And as we know, Charles has he has Catholic sympathies, and we are going to see Catholics definitely support Charles. The Roundheads are going to be the opposition. This is kind of a coalition of Puritans and the Parliament, and this is the opposition. These are the people who oppose the king. Puritans very much going to be a part of this group, Presbyterian Puritans, and we're also going to see the Scots in Scotland support the Puritans and support Parliament. Definitely because we had seen Charles, try to enforce Anglicanism within Scotland. They didn't like that. Enforce that episcopal system in Scotland. They did not like that. All right, so the Scots are going to be helping Parliament out. So we have the Cavaliers and the Roundheads. All right, this map is going to just quickly shows you how quickly Parliament is going to gain control over England, and it's the Royalists are going to. This kind of just shows how the Royalists lose and kind of the sequence and the chronology of the English Civil War. But it's pretty obvious, as on the map you can see that Parliament's going to gain the upper hand, all right, and win this Civil War. Let's talk about why. Well, one major reason why is the alliance with Scotland. It's going to be very helpful just in terms of manpower, supply, materials, and kind of almost opens up another front. As we know, Scotland is kind of above England. But the main reason is Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell is going to be the leader of this Puritan parliamentary army. It's called the New Model Army. He is a devout Puritan. He's a Congregationalist. He was very well organized. He's going to introduce a lot of discipline within the army, and they are going to he's going to really develop this new model army into a superior fighting force than what the king has. And there is Oliver Cromwell. Okay, and he is the leader of this new model army. He's going to be the leader of the Roundheads. Okay, and he was a devout Puritan. He was a more radical Puritan. He was Congregationalist. Okay, there he is. All right. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the king is lost. The Parliament has won. The Puritans have won. There's going to be some major changes that we're going to be seeing in England, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get into that. All right. One of the first developments, ladies and gentlemen, that's super, 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 super important is we are going to see Parliament try Charles the First, okay, on charges of being a tyrant, a traitor, a murderer, and he is going to be killed. He is going to be beheaded and executed in 1649. Really important for us to understand this. This is going to shock Europe, shock the monarchs in Europe all around. This is a king being executed, being murdered, being killed for his crimes. Very much going to foreshadow, ladies and gentlemen, the French Revolution that we're going to be seeing, the Russian Revolution. Okay, we're going to see Tsar Nicholas in World War I be killed. by the Soviets, and we are going to see Louis XVI be killed in the revolution as well. So kind of foreshadowing that monarchs are not invincible. Monarchs can fall from power, and we are going to see that later on. Absolutely in our class, but this is going to, right, during the 1600s, this is very, very putting all monarchs on alert. Hey, okay, if you do not listen to the people, or if you can lose your power, you can lose your place. And so this is going to shock monarchs all over. And like I said, if a monarch in England can be killed, a monarch can be killed in any other country. And so we're going to start to see some different reactions from monarchs. One of the biggest reactions we're going to see, especially in France, is monarchs are going to, this is going to influence, the Bourbon line, and we'll see it with Louis the 14th to facilitate control, even more control over society, to grab even more power. All right, and this is almost out of fear of being, losing power and being killed. But Charles I is killed, ladies and gentlemen. Very big development. All right. We're going to see Parliament kind of represent the pinnacle of power now. They have power. Their monarch is dead, all right? And so Parliament is going to do some pretty radical things. They're going to abolish the monarchy. So now there is no more monarchy in England. They're going to abolish the House of Lords, and the House of Commons will be ruling Parliament, and the Anglican Church. Whoa. All right? And we're going to see in Parliament a very big division between some of the more moderate and radical Puritans about how to rule the country now. Now they have control, all right, and we're gonna see some fighting and division amongst Parliament on what to do with this power, all right. And we're also going to see some new religious groups emerge out of this: the Levelers, the Quakers. But we're going to see some serious change, ladies and gentlemen, in England, all right. And we're going to see Parliament kind of fumble what to do with all this power, and eventually what we're going to see almost like a dictatorship with Oliver Cromwell. But we'll get to that. All right, but there's a lot now. There's a lot to do in England. Now they have to rule. The Parliament has fought for their rights, for power. They have won. Now they have to rule, and they're going to really make some crucial mistakes that'll eventually lead to the Restoration. Okay, and we'll see that will be with Charles II. All right, let's continue. All right, and this is just not a very good image. Sorry, it's a little pixelated at full screen, but just showing the execution of Charles I. All right, very, 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 alarming to the rest of the governments in Europe, like I said. Okay, and just a very shocking thing to see the leader of a country, a prominent politician, being executed. But we'll be seeing that later on in Europe. This is not the last time we will see a monarch or a leader be killed. All right. Let's talk about the Interregnum, ladies and gentlemen. The Interregnum is this period of a rule without a king. All right, so this is where we're going to see Parliament, Cromwell, rule the English, and kind of mold England into their own vision. All right, and we're going to see some pretty serious changes. All right, the first phase of this Interregnum is called the Commonwealth. Okay, and this was really the best way you can describe the Commonwealth is kind of this puritanical republic. Okay. It was without the king, it was without the House of Lords, it was really just like a military state, all right? But later on, we're going to see the protectorate, and this is where Oliver Cromwell becomes the Lord Protector of England, and he really rules almost, and this is kind of one of the ironic parts, we'll see this in the French Revolution too with Napoleon, but Oliver Cromwell is going to rule almost like a dictator, and he's going to have a lot of power, and it's really interesting because he's kind of holding all this power, and he's going to be doing things that he, kind of complained about Charles doing. And so he's going to be a little hypocritical in his rule, because he's going to be, governing almost in a similar fashion that Charles did, that really upset Oliver Cromwell and upset Parliament in the first place. So it's going to be really interesting. One of the things that we're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, is Oliver Cromwell is going to dissolve Parliament, just like Charles did. So it's going to be very, very hypocritical in Oliver Cromwell's rule. He's going to divide England up into 12 districts. He's going to conquer Ireland and Scotland quite brutally, deny religious freedoms to Anglicans and Catholics. And so it's going to be really interesting that Oliver Cromwell, and like I said, he's going to rule in a very hypocritical way, because he's going to be kind of enacting some of the legislation that he complained about. not granting religious, freedoms, not allowing Parliament to have a say in policy. All right, so the Protectorate, it really is a dictatorship. Okay, and Oliver Cromwell is ruling in a very similar fashion to Charles. Let's continue. All right, now eventually, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to see England, once Oliver Cromwell is out of office, England is going to be ready kind of for a reset, and we're going to see the restoration of the monarchy with King Charles II. All right, and England's going to be stoked. All right, the restoration, they're going to be really tired of kind of this Puritan rule, and so we are going to see England and Parliament restore the monarchy, and that will be with Charles II. All right, and Charles II is the eldest son of Charles I. Okay, let's talk about this. All right, so we're going to see Parliament, okay, with a lot of Cavalier influence. Remember, the Cavaliers were the initial supporters of the monarchy and King Charles I. All right, restore Charles II, and they were very tired of puritanical rule. Okay, so we're going to see England return to a state of like almost pre-Civil War status. All right, they're going to kind of be almost identical to England's going to look very similar to how they looked prior to the Civil War. And you might be thinking, wait, then why did they fight the Civil War? That's quite silly. All right, well, we're gonna see if there will be some distinct changes. All right, they're gonna have a king in an Anglican church, similar to the pre-Civil War status. All right, there's gonna be a Parliament of Lords and Commons that only met when summoned. You're gonna have bishops. All right, a prayer book. All right, but Parliament is stronger than ever. And the key thing that's different from prior to the Civil War is that Parliament has won a war. They have killed a king. All right, and so they are a force to be reckoned with. Even though it's the status quo prior, they have that similar status prior to the pre-Civil War, Charles II is very well aware of what Parliament can do and the support that Parliament does have among the public and the extreme lengths that Parliament will go to defending their power. Remember, they won a war and then they executed Charles II's dad. All right, so Parliament is not playing around, and he knows that. Okay, he knows that. But Charles II and his brother James, let's just say they make some silly mistakes, much like their forefathers. Okay, so Charles is going to come back. He's going to agree to rules set forth by Parliament. All right, we all know how that goes, right? Not always followed, but he's going to come back and agree to rules, and he's going to take over. All right, now something really important that's going to be happening, ladies and gentlemen, during this time is the development of political parties, and that's going to be something that we are going to really discuss in great detail and depth throughout this entire class. Some of the first important political parties, and we're going to see all types of important political parties. Okay, some of the first two that I want us to acknowledge and understand are the Tories and the Whigs. Okay, the Tories, ladies and gentlemen, are typically supporters of the monarchy. And the Whigs will be Puritans who favor Parliament. And eventually we're going to see, the rise of more conservative and liberal groups. Okay, and the names of these parties will change over time. But these are two important political parties in Parliament in England. They're going to have a lot of influence within the government. Okay, so the Tories, nobles, generally more conservative. These are Anglicans who support the monarchy. Whigs, more middle class, Puritans. Okay, Protestant. More radical Protestant, more liberal-leaning Protestants who favor Parliament. Okay, and we'll be talking about those groups a little bit later, and especially during the other chapters in class. All right, now we're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, some important legislation and important changes when it comes to religion. All right, the Clarendon Code of 1661. This is going to be passed by the monarchists and the Anglicans in Parliament to try to exclude other various groups from religious life. Presbyterians, Catholics, more independent religions from official religious and political life. That's not going to make the Catholics very happy. That's not going to make the Puritans very happy. All right. But the bigger thing that I want y'all to know about, what's going on during this time is that Charles has secret Catholic sympathies. All right. And again, this is a big problem. And we kind of saw this with James. Kind of saw this with Charles I. All right, this is not going to end well for Charles and especially his brother, and this is kind of just showing a major flaw in Charles and the Stuarts, is that they don't have a pulse on England when it comes in a religious sense. We remember we talked about Elizabeth, what made her a really successful monarch and a politique, right? She understood compromise. She understood the middle ground. Charles, he's gonna make some silly mistakes, all right, and then he's gonna lose a lot of support from the people, all right. So he's gonna issue this edict called the Declaration of Indulgence, and it's gonna suspend all laws against Catholics, okay, and non-Anglican Protestants, all right. He's also gonna make a deal, with Louis XIV, leader of France. We'll discuss him, okay, very devout Catholic, for relaxing laws on Catholics. This is not going to make the Puritans happy. All right, the Puritans, again, and this is, you're kind of seeing some earlier tidings of the Civil War that we just talked about with Charles I. All right, this is a problem. All right, this is a major problem in England if you have Catholic sympathies, and so we are going to see the Puritans go, oh no, here we go again. All right, and so these Catholic sympathies are going to bring a lot of trouble to the Stuarts. All right, the Whigs in Parliament, okay, and Puritans who are part of this are going to resist. All right, and they're going to pass this Test Act. All right, which is really important. And it's going to require all officials, civil and militarily, of the crown to swear an oath against the doctrine of transubstantiation. Well, we know that transubstantiation is a very important Catholic belief. And so no Catholic would do this because Catholics believe in transubstantiation. And the Whigs in Parliament are passing this law that you have to swear an oath against this. All right, so they are retaliating against Charles for this Declaration of Indulgence. And we're seeing some religious conflict is brewing. Are we going to have another civil war? All right, we're going to get to that. All right, and this is aimed at Charles, but also aimed at his brother. Okay, his brother, who has Catholic sympathies as well. All right, the Habeas Corpus Act. Okay, we're going to see Parliament continue to go after Charles's power. Okay, they're going to enable judges to demand that prisoners be in court during trial. They're going to have the right to a speedy trial. It's going to forbid the notion of double jeopardy, which is when you are charged with the same crime twice. Okay, you can't be charged with the same crime twice. All right, so again, trying to limit the monarch's power. And we saw that, right, with the Petition of Right. We saw, prior to the English Civil War with Charles I, Parliament going after, saying, hey, Charles, you can't do this. You need, here's some laws. These are some rights of the people. All right, we're seeing Parliament do that again, and now are we on the verge of a second English Civil War? What's going to happen? All right, well, let's get into it. All right, we're going to see James II take over. All right, we're going to see James II take over. All right, so Charles, he's going to die, and he's going to be on his deathbed. He's going to, declare himself a Catholic, and, Parliament's like, we knew that all along. All right, and we are going to see Parliament be very wary of James and have a very contentious relationship with him, and eventually get rid of him. All right, so James II is going to inherit the throne from Charles II, and he is going to try to make England completely Catholic. And we know with studying the 30 Years' War, studying the French Wars of Religion, Elizabeth, we know that is just not gonna work in this age of religious division. This is not gonna end well for James. All right. And so what he's going to do, one of the things that he's going to do is he's going to appoint many Catholics to high positions of power. Okay, he's going to try to reissue that Declaration of Indulgence, repeal the Test Act. All right, and he's has a Catholic heir, but all right, Parliament is not going to be willing to sacrifice all these gains that they made during the English Civil War. That's what ECW stands for. All right, and we're going to see Parliament take some decisive action against James. All right, let's move on. All right. And this leads us to the Glorious Revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, the Glorious Revolution is super important for us. Let's take key notes, okay? Definitely can be seen on the AP exam. Definitely will be seen in some way on the AP exam, but also is going to be something that's important for us in terms of the Enlightenment, which we're going to get to in Chapter 9. All right? So the Glorious Revolution is going to kind of be this final act within this 1600s reign with the Stuarts, okay? And really the final act in England's struggle between the monarchy and Parliament, all right? This is also called the Bloodless Revolution, all right? And Parliament simply is going to force James to abdicate the throne. Parliament is going to look at him and say, hey, we're not going back. We're not going back to the status quo. Do you remember what happened to Charles I? All right, we will kill a king if we have to. All right, we will fight a war if we have to. So you need to leave before things get bad. All right, and they're going to force James to abdicate the throne. All right, and they're going to invite James's daughter Mary and her husband William of Orange. All right, to assume the throne. But there's kind of a catch. All right. All right, and there's William of Orange and Queen Mary. If you've ever heard of the colleges of William and Mary, all right, named after the influence of them. So we have the English Bill of Rights, all right? And so William and Mary, in order to become the monarchs of England, they have to agree to this English Bill of Rights, okay? And this English Bill of Rights is fundamental, really important. We need to know this. Very influential to the Enlightenment, very influential to future liberal events that we're going to talk about. Very influential to the Enlightenment, American Revolution, French Revolution. All right, this is a very influential document and event. All right, so one of the provisions of the English Bill of Rights is that the king could not be Roman Catholic. All right, laws are only going to be made from the consent of Parliament. All right, Parliament had the right of free speech. Very important. We're going to talk about that in the Enlightenment. Taxation was illegal without parliamentary approval. So Parliament has the power of the purse. They have the power of money. That is their power. All right. Excessive bail, cruel and unusual punishments are prohibited. The right to trial, due process is guaranteed. Okay, and this is really important. Let me go back to the slide really quickly. But there's also, we're going to be talking about the Enlightenment. I've been mentioning that. Okay, there's also like some hypocrisy within the English Bill of Rights, right? So, like for example, an Enlightenment ideal that we're going to see, really promoted will be the right to, freedom of religion. Well, the English Bill of Rights doesn't really follow that. Okay, so there'll be some notions, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to be thinking about the English Bill of Rights when we get into the Enlightenment, and think if the English Bill of Rights really did reflect a lot of the ideals that will be seen in the Enlightenment. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind as we get into the Enlightenment, ladies and gentlemen. All right, the Glorious Revolution was not a democratic revolution. We'll talk about democracy, and what that means. Okay, it was very much a liberal movement, okay, towards progressivism, towards new ideas, but definitely not democracy, as we're not seeing everybody get the right to participate in government, everyone get the right to vote. All right, power, remained in Parliament, but it was really the upper class that was represented in Parliament. We're not going to see middle class, lower socioeconomic groups, women, be represented in Parliament. So it's not truly a democratic movement. So that's just important for us to understand. Okay. Like I said, the majority of English did not have say in government. All right, but it was very much supported by some prominent thinkers, and we're going to be talking about John Locke. Okay, very, very, very much supported by some prominent political and social intellectuals like John Locke, and John Locke will be an important Enlightenment figure that we talk about in chapter 9. Okay, let's continue. All right. So this is really important, ladies and gentlemen, is that England is now a limited monarchy or a constitutional monarchy. All right. An absolute monarch is someone who has complete authority over the government. We're going to see that with Louis the 14th. He says, "I am France. I am the state. I can do whatever I want." Okay. That's not England. All right. England is not an absolute monarchy where the monarch does not have complete authority over the government and the lives of the people. England is now a constitutional, limited monarch where that power is limited by a constitution, and we kind of see that in the form of the English Bill of Rights, and limited by a legislative body, Parliament. All right, Parliament is a check on the power of the monarch, and we're going to be talking about this idea of checks and balances, limiting power, separating power. Those will definitely be themes in the Enlightenment that we're going to be talking about, and influence future governments like the United States in our current government today. All right, but now we're going to start seeing countries diverge in their political processes and kind of their political ideologies. And we see England and France going completely separate ways. Absolute monarchy versus a constitutional limited monarchy. All right. Other important legislation during this time is the Toleration Act of 1689. It's going to grant the right to worship for Protestant groups. All right. It's not going to extend religious liberties to Jews or Catholics, though. So, and we're going to be talking about freedom of religion. This is definitely not necessarily full freedom of religion, because it is persecuting some religious groups. All right. We're going to also see the Act of Settlement in 1701. All right. If King William or his sister-in-law Anne died without children, we're going to see the crown pass to House Hanover in Germany. All right. And they did die without kids, and so we will see eventually, ladies and gentlemen, the start of the Hanoverian line, and that will be like George the First and a new line of monarchs. However, monarchs are becoming less and less important in England, and I'm going to get to that at the end of this lecture because we're going to see the rise of prime ministers. Okay, but this is kind of showcasing, ladies and gentlemen, a new line. So the Stuarts will be eventually gone, and it's not like you need to memorize William and Anne or the Hanoverians. We're going to start getting into prime ministers that we need to know. Okay, but we do see a transition of the line of the crown. Okay, we're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, the Act of Union in 1707, where England and Scotland unite. All right, and this is eventually going to help create Great Britain. So we are seeing the kind of the creation, the United Kingdom, the creation of Great Britain. The Scots wanted to be part of England. They want access to England's and Europe's trade empire, but England's trade empire. All right, and England gave them greater access to Europe's Atlantic economy. All right, but they also feared the Stuart return to power in Catholicism. Okay, they also feared a Stuart return to power in Catholicism, so they are going to unite with England to have some more influence in the government. Let's continue. All right, we're also later on, and we'll get to this in the 1800s, but Ireland is also going to join the UK as well. Okay, so that occurs about 100 years later in the 1800s. All right, the UK was very fearful of the Irish Rebellion and France using Ireland as a base of invasion, and so they're going to include Ireland. And in the 1800s, there's someone in France, his name is Napoleon, causing a whole lot of trouble, and so the UK was very fearful of that, of Ireland being used to invade England, and so we're going to see the UK invite Ireland into the United Kingdom. Okay, and what we're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, that's also very important is the rise of the cabinet system in the 1700s. Okay, now, and I just quickly want to discuss Parliament and kind of how Parliament works in a very general form and fashion, okay, is that Parliament is composed of two houses, the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Now, the House of Commons is going to be the dominant house with a lot of power, ladies and gentlemen, okay? Now, this is kind of how it works, all right, is you're going to have political parties within the House of Commons. You're going to have the Tories and the Whigs, for example, okay? Well, if the party that gains the most seats is known as the majority, the dominant party, and that party then elects a leader to kind of guide Parliament and guide the House of Commons, because obviously that dominant party has the majority and they have the power in the House of Commons, and so that prime leader is going to be selected by the majority to lead the majority, if that makes sense. So, for example, if the Whigs gain the majority of seats in Parliament, the Whigs will get together and elect someone to lead the Whigs and therefore Parliament, and that will become known as the Prime Minister. All right, and we're going to be talking about some important prime ministers from various parties as we go throughout this class and as we go throughout England. But it's really a prime minister is representing that party, representing the majority party, and therefore is in charge of Parliament. All right, and the current prime minister of the UK is Boris Johnson. Okay, let's continue. All right, Sir Robert Walpole. All right, he is often viewed as the first prime minister in Great Britain, and we're going to discuss many. Like I've said before, he's going to lead the cabinet for about 20 years. Okay, and we're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, as prime ministers gain more and more power, as Parliament, prime ministers are often viewed as kind of like the leaders of the country. We're going to see the king's role and the monarchy's role really diminish. So today, for example, we hear all about Queen Elizabeth. There's the monarchy in England is still around, but they have very limited power. Okay, and they're more of like a symbol. All right, they really have little say within the UK and England, Scotland and Ireland's government. All right, it's really the role of the prime minister. Okay, the prime minister. Okay, all right, that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Okay, and on the next lecture, I'm going to be discussing absolutism. Okay, and we're going to be going to the continent. Have a great day.